Just a matter of weeks, voters get to decide whether to keep or repeal the state's law protecting the rights of transgender people in places of public accommodations. But a larger national battle over those civil rights may be on the horizon. A draft memo obtained by the New York Times reveals the Trump administration could be gearing up to narrow the legal definition of sex under Title IX, which bans gender discrimination in education. It would propose a person's sex be defined as, quote, a person's status as male or female based on immutable biological trait identifiable by or before birth. Also, the sex listed on a person's birth certificate would serve as proof of an individual's gender, quote, unless rebutted by genetic evidence. The news prompted protests with rights groups and activists worrying that discrimination is exactly what would happen to millions of Americans who are concerned this threatens their very existence.
It's disgusting, and it makes me feel dehumanized, and it makes me feel honestly, completely unrecognized as a person.
Here at home, the battle over transgender rights has come in the form of ballot question 3. It would call for the repeal of a 2016 law that prohibits discrimination against transgender individuals in public accommodations like locker rooms, restaurants, hotels. A national transgender discrimination survey found that transgender people experience double the rate of unemployment of the general population, more than twice the rate of homelessness of the general population. They're at higher risk of hate crimes, including 51% report facing harassment or bullying in school, 64% suffered sexual assault, 61% report being victims of physical assault. That vulnerability is a storyline highlighted by the character Sophia Brissett in the Netflix series Orange is the New Black.
You have any idea how ignorant you sound?
We just want a little peek. Educate ourselves.
Get the out of my house.
Not till we see it.
Actress and activist Laverne Cox, first openly transgender person to appear on the cover of Time, the first to win an Emmy, and so much more, joins me now. Laverne, it's a pleasure to meet you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much.
So the polling numbers, as I'm sure you know in question 3 here, suggest that an overwhelming number of people support keeping the protections for transgender people. But across America, do you think there's a growing acceptance that transgender people should be as free from discrimination as everybody else?
I hope so. That's part of my raison d'etre for doing the work that I do and for being here in Massachusetts. And I want to celebrate the win that the citizens of Massachusetts got a couple of years ago when they passed these provisions protecting trans folks. Yeah, in a bipartisan way. But it just reminds us that even when we think we have civil rights protections, the fight continues.
But by the way, in the interim, I think it was, 5 or 6 months ago, a proposal to ban certain protections in Anchorage, Alaska, which is not exactly a bastion of progressivism, I don't think. That was defeated. The good side prevailed there, too. But it seems to me that fear of the unknown, whether it's people fleeing violence in Central America or it's transgender people in this country, especially when it's exploited by people in power, causes people to make decisions about other people that sometimes aren't the right one. Isn't that true?
My personal philosophy as of late, really the past couple of months, I've woken up every day and said to myself, I can choose love today and not fear. And I can choose love today and not fear. And I think our current administration is really trying to use fear to maintain a certain sense of power. And I think it's important, I'd like to remind people that this kind of attack on transgender people is not new. Since marriage equality became the law of the land, this administration and state legislatures all over the country have been introducing legislation targeting trans people. In the past 3 years alone, over 100 pieces of legislation have been introduced in state legislatures all over the country, basically targeting trans folks and trying to excommunicate us from public space. And so these kinds of attacks that we are seeing in the federal government right now are not new. And the folks who are trying to challenge public accommodations protections here in the state of Massachusetts, those people have been going all over the country trying to do this.
Well, speaking of fear, and speaking of the ballot question, I want to show you part of an ad that the No on 3 people. The No on 3 would remove the protections. Yes on 3 would keep them.
We want Yes on 3.
I know you do. I want to show you a piece of the No on 3 ad and get your reaction. Here it is.
Okay.
What does Massachusetts Question 3 mean to you? It means any man who says he is a woman can enter a woman's locker room, dressing room, or bathroom at any time, even convicted sex offenders. And if you see something suspicious and say something to authorities, you could be the one arrested and fined up to $50,000.
What's the reaction to that?
The first time I saw that, I was so utterly disturbed because, again, it's fear-mongering, and it has absolutely nothing to do with transgender people. So folks who have had issues with trans folks existing in public space for years, this is not new, have been claiming that if we have public accommodation protections for trans people, then anyone could claim that they were a woman and enter women's spaces and do untoward things. In the localities and states that have had public accommodation protections for transgender people, we've never seen any incidences of this. This is a really good example of fear-mongering. This doesn't happen. And I think it's important for people to know that and understand, look at the lived experiences of real trans people and not these sort of made-up scenarios that have never happened.
You know, you mentioned same-sex marriage a couple of minutes ago, and as I'm sure you know, the pivotal decision, the Goodrich case was made right here.
Oh, I know.
The woman who wrote it is a frequent guest, Margaret
Yes.
Marshall, sitting in that chair. I have always been of the belief that while laws and court decisions are important, they don't change people's hearts and minds.
No.
Real people do. And you know, whether it was Will and Grace or Ellen on television,
Yes.
where all of a sudden, oh my God, they're like me in so many ways. My sense is that while laws like Question 3 and its protection are really important, it's people like you. Like Christine Hallquist, who's running for governor in Vermont on
Yes.
the Democratic ticket, first transgender candidate in a major American party. That's what cracks people's minds open, not just laws. Am I not right about that?
I think you are right about that, and I'm glad you did a study that determined that 84% of Americans don't personally know someone trans, so the representations that we have in the media are critical. But when we have laws that stigmatize and scapegoat transgender people, it sends a message to trans folks that we're second-class citizens, and it sends a message to folks who are not trans that it is okay to treat trans people as second-class citizens, and it emboldens them to treat us badly. That's so laws don't necessarily change hearts and minds, but it's important that our government does not scapegoat us, does not take away our liberties and take away our dignity.
You know, when you said, talked about representations, I'm assuming it drives you out of your mind when you hear that Scarlett Johansson is going to play look at the smile on your face, a transgender man, or Jeffrey Tambor. I assume you're not happy with it. Yes?
I was so grateful earlier this year to do a brilliant roundtable with some brilliant, with the other fellow trans actors I got to do the roundtable with, are brilliant actors for Variety magazine, where we talked about that issue at length. It's over an hour. But I believe artists should be able to do whatever artists feel creatively that we need to do, but understand that our freedom of expression as artists has consequences. And for the transgender community, because so few people know us in real life, how we're represented on screen can have catastrophic effects on the lived experiences of trans folks.
I want to seize on something else you said a minute ago, because I've been obsessed with this for years. About 15 years ago, before a majority, which is what it is now, of people support same-sex marriage overwhelmingly in this country, there was a poll in the New York Times. Do you support same-sex marriage? A majority did not. Yes. The only two demographics that did were young people, who generally are more progressive, and this is the relevance to what you said a second ago, people who said they knew a person who was gay, who was in a same-sex relationship. That's what's ultimately going to change all this, is it not? When it's not 84% who don't know someone who's trans, but 51% who do, no?
And that's why I've been so excited about highlighting the humanity of trans bay staters. I just came from this incredible event with young people and trans folks from here in Massachusetts who told their stories and who are so incredible and so amazing. And really, all trans folks want is the same opportunities as everyone else has. We want to be able to, go to restaurants, go to school, go to work safely without being harassed, without being told that we're not allowed to come in because of who we are, so we can live our dreams. I've been so blessed to be able to live out some of my dreams here in this country, and that's what America should be about. Everyone having the opportunity to pursue
You said
our dreams.
those kids are amazing. You're pretty amazing yourself, I should say. It's really an honor.
Thank
to meet
you.
Laverne Cox.
Thank you so much. appreciate
so
it.
much. For more information on questions 1, 2, and 3, check out WGBH's News Plain English Guide to the 2018 ballot questions. That's on our WGBH News election page. That's WGBHnews.org/election 2018. Once again, Election Day is now less than 2 weeks away. It's November 6th. Be sure to join us next week for the only Lieutenant Governor debate between incumbent Karen Polito and Democratic challenger Quentin Palfrey. That's Monday, October 29th at 7.